Holy smokes, it's April Fool's Day. What a horrible time to be on Twitter right now. It's like every single thing is one big, huge lie. But the fear and greed is not lying. It's at 34, same as it was yesterday. Surprised this wasn't a big lie as well. Holy smokes, every YouTuber, I'm quitting. I'm finally wrapping it up. After all these years still. Bitcoin dominant 61.4%, 24-hour volume 77 billion, and the overall market cap 2.71 trillion. Give or take 100 million. Where am I going? Oh, that's right. I'm going right here to the 4-hour chart, the noisy little so-and-so. Now we had what some legacy analysts would call a little bit of a pump, much to everyone's chagrin. Everyone is expecting lower lows. Really, it's almost like the market sentiment, at least on Twitter, and that's really my only gauge. I mean, where else do you gauge market sentiment besides the fear and greed index and Twitter? It's basically the end of the economy. The economy's falling. The Japan carry trade's going to demolish the rest of the functioning economy. It's. I would hesitate to say that it's the worst sentiment I may have ever seen, and so of course, I get excited when the sentiment's so bearish. It just makes sense when you really zoom out. Bull markets don't jump out of complete euphoria and optimism, and they come out of extreme lows. That's why it's a bull run, right? And then vice versa, bear markets kind of explode downwards out of extreme optimism. Now one might argue that at 109 we had extreme optimism, but we'll see. We for all intents and purposes, if we want to make mountains out of molehills, because that's what we're doing when the price doesn't really move. And even though it went, let's see where it is, 81.5 to 83, 84, let's say, that's, $3,000. It's a pretty big move. Like if we were down in the bear market, like 25,000, 25 to, let's say it went up 3,000. Now we're talking percentages, so everything's wildly different, right? So if we were just to talk percentages, it gets wildly different and more bullish actually. So yesterday's pump, let's just go wick to wick. Let's call it 4%. A 4% upside, it's significant. Even farther down, like when we are down, what's if we were in the depths of the bear market? Let's call it what was it? When was the depths? Right here? Yeah. What would 4% be from here? Boom, boom, boom. 16, 4%. Whoa, it's too big. It's too big. Yeah. $4,000. I guess it's kind of the same. Did I get my math wrong here? Anyway, I can barely see this chart right now. On the weekly, we did, like the video said yesterday, we had a bearish engulfing candle. We don't like to see that, especially after such a demolishing run. Giga Chadwick, Elizabeth Warren announced she's buying Bitcoin this morning. She said it was time to finally acknowledge that this is just an April Fool's joke and you can stop rating. That would be, there's a massive part of me that thinks that Elizabeth Warren has Bitcoin. Like if there's one thing that these greedy dinosaur boomers are, is they'll hedge their bet, and for them, when they're making hundreds of millions of dollars off the backs of the U.S. taxpayer, what is, buying a couple Bitcoin just to have a little bit of a, schmuck insurance. But anyway, we had this bearish engulfing candle. You don't want to see it at the bottom of a massive run line. We were hoping that we might see on the monthly chart, it closed green. But of course, she closed red. And I mean, if we want to make a optimistic mountain out of a molehill here, it's, somewhat of a spinning top. I wouldn't, ideally in the middle would be more of a spinning top candle, but we can see there was market indecision all month. So to me, I take that with a grain of salt, obviously, but it does, let's just put for posterity's sake here, a nice little rounding bottom there. That's what a rounding bottom would look like. Now, we are in the summer bummer. Could we see us sit here at 82 for, what is that, July? The answer is, yeah, we could. I mean, every metric says that we could sit here for the next consolidation period, especially amongst the background of this geopolitical, macroeconomic malaise that's going on. If this is my theory. My theory is that the economic distortions that we saw from the previous administration, maybe the past 15 years, it all comes back to money printing and the fiat blood money currency. They create economic distortions, and before you can carry on to, let's call it, the golden age, you have to get rid of these distortions. I mean, it's kind of like having here's the Canuck always going back to hockey. It's like having a hockey team where for the past 12 years you're trying to build this dynasty, and you bought, outside of your cap, because these teams have spending caps and budget caps. Somehow you got around it, and you got all this talent, but they didn't perform, and now you're losing money because they're just like rich kids or whatever, or they just weren't as good as you are. Now, in order for that team to get better, you basically have to exercise those demons and get rid of those economic distortions. And I think that's what we're seeing now, and it's going to be painful. Nothing's easy. If it was easy, everyone would do it, right? It's like you can't think about how I was watching this video on mass formation, of course, right? And it was like, it's a real mind opener, refresher to see how everyone lost their minds in 2020. Now it's over, and as humans, we forget. We forget how crazy it was. But when you see, people swimming with masks on, teachers singing "Hi Ho the Dario," it's time to wear a mask to little kids, you can see how insane it was. Now, that is a perfect example of money printing. It's a great metaphor, because all those things, all those distortions, those misbehaviors, those can only happen when you're falsely funded. And you can only be falsely funded through money printing. And my bullish delusion is that maybe in my lifetime I see a regression back to hard money. I mean, that's why we're here. It's, the pursuit of hard money. It changes society. It changes the course of humanity when we go back to strong money. But we don't have it. And so what happens? We have a weak dollar. We have a weak money printing machine, and it just begets weak. So I always go back to, these losers, right? What do losers do? They can circumvent the system. You get enough of them in there, and they just circumvent the system. And then you have the people that are, know better. It's like, you shouldn't do that. You're going to have problems. It's not going to be well. And they're like, well, we got to do this because it's the only way we're going to win, right? This is how they work. And then these distortions build up, and you got to fix them. And now this isn't going to be Crypto Princess says she lost her head in the pandemic. I was so scared. Yeah, it was weird because, as an old school, I guess conspiracy theorist would be the word, but it's not. I never considered myself a conspiracy theorist. I always thought I was just explaining things in different ways. It's like, no, well, you see how this is how the intention, why I feel I can read an objective chart is because I don't have a biased narrative. You know, obviously, let's you zoom out. I want the price to go up, right? But I know that the market's not going to do what we want it to do because we want it to happen now. So back to that, everyone was scared in 2020. I just couldn't fathom it. It never sunk in. I don't know if there's anyone on the stream that felt the same way, but it never sunk in. You know, like the crazier it got, like when I saw people. So for instance, remember when you had to walk down aisles a certain way? Like you could only walk this way. You had to follow arrows and shit like that. That was so insane to me that I was like, I felt like John Travolta. Like, what? Are you guys seriously? Are you seriously following these arrows? And sure enough, you know, I would say, usually I say 80-20, but I think in the pandemic it was more like 95-5. You know, 95% of the people were just going down these arrows, following blindly, right? And so what I realized is that when I didn't do that, because it's like I got to get to the meat aisle, so I'm not like this to the meat aisle. So I'm gonna function like it's a normal everyday. And what happened is that people just ignored the fact that I was even there. Like it was almost like I ghosted myself, just doing normal things. I became my own ghost in the matrix, so to speak. They just didn't want it. They couldn't acknowledge it because can you imagine if you were a normal person and all these people were normal people, but they just got, you know, screwed up, scared, whatever you call it. I to a certain degree understand the mass formation, but when someone if you're following these arrows and someone just cuts to Jimmy Coco, super chat on this Tuesday, April 1st. I was wondering, is that an April Fool's Day super chat? It says 25 for 2025 round deux. Thank you very much, Jimmy Coco's $25 super chat for 2025. Much appreciated. Sometimes I think when I'm going off on this tangent, people are like, oh, gotcha. Okay, maybe if I super chat, he'll stop talking about this weird shit. Anyway, that was it. I became a ghost in the matrix, and I felt comfortable. You know, it was almost like I finally could live my life normally without anyone, because people don't want to admit, hey, that guy's not following these arrows and he's not wearing a mask. You know, so in a weird way, I could walk around without a mask, not following these arrows, and no one said anything to me. You know, maybe it's because, you know, I'm above average height. You know, I'm not super tall, 6'2", with shoes. And a man. And I guess maybe some of these people are like, I'm not going to really say anything to this guy. It's maybe not worth my time. No Karens, no nothing like that. Just live through life as normal. And now, as you can see, we do have this cute little bear flag. Do I have the bear flag thing here? Let me see here. Bear flag. You think I'd have this more organized, you know? I have a bull flag. I don't have a bear flag. Anyway, maybe I'll just draw in here because these doodles. Holy smokes! I've noticed Scotty Mo isn't here, but Scotty Mo sent me a shirt yesterday. I just got it, and it's so amazing. And of course, I was going to wear it. It got caught up in the laundry, and now it's sitting there in the laundry wet. So I'll wear it tomorrow. It's based on astrology for me. It's hilarious. You guys will find it. I think what I'll do is I'll try to, you know, link it to Scotty, because Scotty Mo has a t-shirt company, right? So I'll wear it tomorrow. If you like it, you can contact Scotty. I'm sure he can hook you up with one. It's hilarious. I might wear it at my gig in Vegas. did I say gig? Not a gig. I just go in there. Right? You know how weird that is. So you take the poll, you slide it all to the breakout point, and then we're all at, let's make this a little bit smaller for everyone. We're at our old channel of Eternal Monotony, the Summer Bummer Resistance, which is now would be acting as support. Now, can you imagine 70K? Listen, here's some hard facts that nobody really wants to acknowledge. If you factor in currency debasement, we're basically where we were 2021. We're not really that high, which to me, again, I immediately get bullish on this bearish weirdness. It just shows how much farther we have in this bull run. Now time might be running out, but at the end of the day, you have to understand that to a certain degree, so all bets are off with institutional bids coming in, and so for instance, the reason why price, people get upset the price isn't moving. You hear all these massive buys, by Michael Smith-Saylor, but they're $2 billion. What is a $700 million Bitcoin? We're over 500,000 Bitcoin. Now, to a certain degree, when things are bought over the counter on the OTC desk, it's like its own form of wash trading, because basically they're like an agent, right? An over-the-counter desk will basically take a phone call. This is an old school phone call. I remember, so here's a little tangent. I was having a conversation with Duke, and I can't remember what I was talking about, but I was perpetrating like I was on a phone. And I said, and then basically, Duke, when you don't want to talk, you just hang up the phone. You just hang it up, right? And he's like, what are you hanging up? Like, you hang up the phone, Duke. He's like, what are you hanging it up on? So obviously most people don't know that, when you had a phone, you hung it up. It was like the way of like, if you really wanted to be angry at someone, no, click, and you hung it up, right? And it went ching-a-ling-a-ling-a-ling-a-ling, and it made that sound. Obviously, you can't do that. You got to really powerfully end. That doesn't have the same thing. Anyway, back to the OTC desk. It's more like an agent saying, "Hey, I want to buy 700 billion, or 700 billion, not today. It's coming, 700 million in Bitcoin." And they're like, "Oh, okay, well, let me. I actually know a guy who's trying to offload 700 million, right? And let's just say that those two parties are working in concert. It really is like a wash trade. It just pockets to pockets. Like, it goes from my pocket to their pocket, and it doesn't really affect the price because nothing's really happened, unfortunately. So now I'm getting ahead of myself. This is why I drink too much coffee, I think, in the morning. I made a video about this, about the real black swan is retail not being here, right? So all these OTC wash trading, pocket to pocket, makes sense when retail comes in and bids it up, right? But if retail doesn't come in and bid it up, it's just basically these institutions trading hands. And we saw that with the ETFs. They were basically, the water was coming out of a grayscale, and then they're just catching it and buying it up. So, there's just slightly more pressure. But the reason why, a massive, and it makes sense as much as we don't want to. Like, I would rather them buy on the exchange, but put yourself into the mind of a massive buyer, right? So think of it like an auction. The exchange is basically a live auction, and so instead of, there's not going to be a buyer for $700 million worth of Bitcoin, there's going to be buyers. But at that point, it's individual. So the slippage between, this thing's going, how is that going dead? I thought you were plugged in. The slippage between price as the bids go up would increase it. That's why we see it as retail kind of bids the price up. But when a 700 million buy comes in, They would never do it because they would never get it. Let's say it's at 83.7. By the time they're done, finding sellers, the price would move to its according bid up price, which would probably be $4,000 or $5,000, right? That's how much that would, we like to think that 700 million is a huge buy, and it is. But as the prices get higher, it takes more to move more. But that's what would happen if it was on. So as a buyer, you probably want to get it all at once, right? And then instead of putting it on. But my sneaking suspicion is that the last little powder keg, the last little bullish ace up, let's call it Michael Saylor's sleeve, is to do an exchange buy. It's almost like economic defibrillation. Defibrillation? Clear. And that's what can spark, like, if we hit some sort of, you have to imagine, my theory is if I was, so here's a funny story. At the Vegas convention, I'll be behind the main stage in like a green room of sorts, playing piano. So I'm assuming I might be able to meet some of these peeps. And I would like to ask, hey, why don't you buy, $1 billion at a low price, Michael Saylor? Why don't you just to, clear it, beep, and start that bull run again. That's my bullish delusion theory, is that they're saving that for. But why would? And so in the mind of a sick degenerate too, right? You're not there to buy and die, right? You're there to buy and constantly buy. He understands the value of it before. When you're sitting there so incredibly bullish, you end up looking foolish to a certain degree. When someone asked me, is like, do you think he's a friend or foe, Michael Saylor? And I had to think for a second, because the part of me understands that there's a certain degree of the leverage in the system is never our friends. It's like anyone dealing with leverage is putting the system at a certain pressure and risk, right? It's not functioning at its best. It's like a computer overloaded with certain programs running. It's going to be slightly jerky sometimes, and then eventually, if it gets too crazy, it'll just crash, right? So to me, there is a certain degree of trepidation when it comes to these big players and their leveraged trades. And I mean, his leverage is back room, with his own micro strategy. So it's not like he's leveraged trading. He's not like on an exchange on someone's affiliate link, 10xing some blah blah blah. So to a certain degree, he is a little bit of a caution flag. But at the end of the day, I saw some crazy fact that he's bought 23% of this bull market. So think about that for a second. If he bought 23%, imagine where the price would be without Michael Saylor. Now, one might argue there'd be a different Michael Saylor. Michael Saylor is a position, and then he is the one, and there might be other Michael Saylors that would step up, but there's only one. Or there's only one person that's going to do 23% of the bull run. I find that a crazy metric, 23%. Now, of course, I didn't run it through Grok, but if you think about it, who else has bought as much as Michael Saylor? Probably not. He's bought what? Has he bought as much as? So when I say has he bought as much as BlackRock isn't actually buying it. They're buying it for people, right? So it's different. So you might argue that retail has aped into the ETFs. Maybe, but that's more institutionally driven ETF buying. At the end of the day, Duke's in a tri-racket camp at a club here where he does squash, tennis, badminton and swims. And at the end of every day, I'd say, "Hey, Duke, did you have fun?" He's like, "Meh, it's okay." Little does he know that in my spring break, I was kicked out of the house at 9 a.m. after breakfast, and I had to go play in puddles with my buddies for 8 hours till I earned my dinner.
Make sure you like